Welcome to a GG3 podcast, and this one from Las Vegas to Snake City, founded in 1905, one of my favorite cities in the world. And today, I'm excited because we got a special guest. My man over here, Djehuty Matra. How we doing, brother?
On top of the world, beloved. Thank you for having me.
You know, I'm going to go straight into it, bro. We have a lot to talk about today. You are a man that if there's, they're going to write books, not chapters about you, books. You've been through so many different philosophies. I just got to say, it's very impressive. But before we get started, you're a man who runs multi-million-dollar companies. You've had over 40, 50 people working for you at one time. You're a multi-millionaire. How come the white man hasn't kept you down? How come the white devil hasn't kept you down? How come the Zionists have not kept you, a black man, down?
Well, first and foremost, beloved, I don't believe in white superiority. I don't believe in white supremacy. I don't believe in these man-made doctrines, these supremacies. The mind is what is supreme, regardless of your race. So you could be white, black, Asian, what have you. The mind is what makes a person supreme. So I don't embrace that. You know, when I did embrace it, it was unconscious. I was unconscious.
There was a time where you embraced the democratic plantation thinking.
Well, in late teens, early 20s, you know, when I started on my sojourn. So a couple of years, but it was by default. You know,
explain that to the people.
When you grow up, Black American or African American, inner city, hood, whatever you want to call it, by default, you are a Democrat. I'm gonna be nice. I normally say demon rat, but I'm a Democrat.
I think that describes them better, though.
Yeah, but I'm gonna, you know.
They have a rat in the name for a reason.
Yeah, these people are something else, man. You can't see that, though. When you're caught up in it, you can't see what you can see when you come out of it. But by default, you are blue. I'm quite sure you've heard the saying, vote blue no matter who. That's some real stuff. It doesn't matter the policies.
So when Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black, that actually is real.
That's real, beloved. That's real. I grew up with that in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. That's real. No matter who, vote blue, which shows political immaturity on or behalf of Black Americans who have been here too long to be politically immature.
Is this a byproduct of feminism? Is this a byproduct of the black woman leading the black household about 70, 80% of the time in America? Not outside of America, but inside of America.
The black woman has led the black family and the black community ever since Black Americans have been over here. That the matriarchy goes back to slavery. As I was telling you the other day, it's layered. So you have what comes out of slavery, and then you also have what comes out of Marxism, which is feminism. Feminism is an outgrowth of Marxism, or one of the many children of Marxism. So it overlaps. So you have the history of slavery, and then you have Marxism / feminism, and then you have what we have today, which is just general social control. So it's layered. It's very, very, very layered. And this is what I was telling you yesterday with Black Americans is very, very layered. As I said yesterday, when America catches a cold, Black Americans catch pneumonia. Our situation is very layered, very layered. This is why I say we have no time to BS. We have no time for entertainment, sport, and play. We're too far behind, and the day has come where you cannot point the finger at other people and blame them for your predicament. You have everything you require today for everything, to do everything, even so-called reparations. You have that on your own. And if Black Americans would do what I advise, the government of the United States of America would give them reparations, just like banks loan money to people who don't need money. But if you're going to sit around here and gangbang and thug and have black lips from smoking marijuana and cornrow and you're sagging and your ass is showing and you're twerking and all this crazy stuff, you will never, ever get it because nobody respects you. You don't even respect yourself.
How is Black America supposed to get ahead, or any race for that matter, when the woman is the dominant figure in the household? How can a woman teach a boy how to become a man?
Can't do it, beloved. So again, it's layered. Everything that's going on with Black Americans is going on with Americans in general. In general. So when we look at America today, it's not just Black Americans. I mean, it's white Americans, Latino Americans, you name it. The woman is in charge. This is a gynocentric corporation or nation. 100% gynocentric for a reason. A lot of people have issues with the statement that man leads.
Why is that a problem?
Because now you have a world, you have a society where the woman leads, or they want the woman to lead. See, when you study history, men have always led. Men are naturally logical creatures. When you're dealing with military war, you're dealing with strategy. You know, you have to have logic. So men, generally speaking, are logical creatures. Women, by nature, are emotional creatures. You cannot go into war being emotional. You will lose. You have to be logical. Logic ties into strategy. Strategy ties into logic. Men, we, generally speaking, we naturally have that. Women do not. And this is not a slight to females. This is just, just being real. This is history.
Fact is fact.
This is culture. This is biology. It is what it is. So when you put the woman in charge, you're putting a creature that is responsible for keeping culture together, rituals, customs, what have you. So when you have Marxism on the scene today and you have the woman leading, she will openly embrace Marxism. You mentioned feminism. It's not maleism, it's feminism. They embrace that.
1917, when the Soviet Union, not the time, the Tsar in the
Nicholas.
Russia, when he was, getting overthrown, he sent his troops on the streets to crush the rebellion. What happened? Women started going on the streets, and they're basically the ones that started what led to the Russian Revolution in 1917. If you go to Hugo Chavez, the United States government had him out of power. He was locked up in 2002. Yeah. He was locked up. They had his successor. They had everything. Mm-hmm. And what happened? Whole bunch of women started protesting around the streets. They shut the country down, and they forced Hugo Chavez's release. And what happened 20 years later? Those same women are eating out of trash cans.
It may sound sexist to a lot of people out there, but it's not. When you know history, it's not. Men have a natural position and role. Women have a natural position and role. We must play our roles. What's going on now is role reversal. We're in an upside down society.
Not in my household.
Well, I'm
not in your
generally.
household.
Of course not. I'm speaking generally. What's going on in the United States of America? We all know that this is not the same United States of America that we once knew.
No.
Okay. Marxism is in full effect. Okay. Full effect. And as I said earlier about Marxism and feminism, it's at an all-time high. It's at an all-time high.
What do you say to people who call you a coon, who call you a house, say you're speaking like a white man? What do you say to people like that? Because no doubt there's people who are listening right now saying that stuff about you.
That's because they don't know Djehuty Madra. I grew up on 105th Street.
Tell them.
Okay, 10-5 East Side Hustler, 9-8 Main Street Mafia Crip. I grew up in those communities, those neighborhoods. That's who I grew up with, the Q102 East Coast Crips.
You're a Crip.
Okay.
You were a Crip.
I never gangbanged myself, but by affiliation. Anytime you grew up in a particular hood, you were a member of that gang in that hood by association, by default association, what have you. So I never got quartered in a gang, any gang. I feared my father too much. I grew up with a father in the house. I had a mother and a father in the house, and I feared my father way more than any gang.
So you were privileged because you had a mom and a dad.
You can say that, which is unfortunate because that's how it's supposed to be. But I feared my father more than any gang member, and Lord knows I feared a lot of those dudes. Those dudes were crazy, but I feared my father more than them.
Why?
Well, my father was like, he was the epitome of manhood, as far as myself, being concerned, right? My father, he was the first image, man. He was the first example of a real man. My father, I never saw my father in fear. Like when the police would come to our house sometimes, my pops didn't hesitate going to the door. He'd push us back, y'all get back, what have you, and he would go handle it, I saw my father work 6 days a week, to provide, for his family. I saw my father check errant dudes of the community, gangbangers or not. I just saw my father do a whole bunch of things that are 100% manhood, under the banner of manhood. And I respected that, and my father also had a side of him as well, too, that I respected, more of that fear-based respect. That if I got out of hand, my siblings too.
Tough love, huh?
We got it very, very. My pops was from Mississippi. He was James Evans of Good Times, man. I'm talking about the hard love but the gangbangers feared my father. The gangbangers feared my father.
Why? Because you would call the police?
No, my father was a man. Like, Pops was just a very unique dude. I call him the maestro. He was just a very unique dude. The fear was more of a respect-based fear. When the Bible talks about in awe, fear the Lord, but it's really talking about an awe or respect, not an unskillful type of fear, but a skillful type. And those gangbangers, man, they displayed that to my father. And a lot of it was because those gangbangers, they knew that you were supposed to have a man on the scene, a man in the house, and they didn't. And so they respected what they didn't have, but what they wanted. That's why they were in the streets gangbanging. They were looking for love in the streets. You know how the song says, looking for love in all the wrong places? That's what was going on with the gangbangers. They were looking for family.
Only thing you're going to find in the streets is bullets and cuffs.
And that's what a lot of them found. But I understand their purpose. I understand what they were looking for. Those dudes were looking for love. That's why they formed their own families. Their families were dysfunctional. Most of them didn't have a father in the house. And the ones that did, the father wasn't present. There, but not present, gone, you see.
How much do you think this was all orchestrated? How much, like when I say the CIA was funneling crack through LA, basically to get black fathers locked up, do you think that was orchestrated on purpose to take the father out the black family because they wanted this type of degeneracy? Because you got to understand, these new world order types, they think generational.
True. I would say from my research, it was incidental. The Central Intelligence Agency was looking to finance a war against communists. Okay,
Nicaragua.
They were looking to counter communism first and foremost. That was their goal. Incidentally, it overlapped in what became of black communities in the United States of America in the 1980s is what manifested. But I would say it was by default. It wasn't directly.
Okay. In the same sense, when World War II started and all the men went off to fight, the women went into the factories.
True.
And they started working because there was no one else to work.
True.
When it was time for the men to come back, the women didn't really want to go back to the house. That was like the 40s to the 50s to the 60s when feminism really kicked in.
True.
So some people could call that circumstantial. I would like to think that these people at the very top of the game, they're playing 3D, 4D chess. And they're basically planning all these moves ahead because we know damn well, no matter what your race was, the family unit was strongest in the late 40s to 50s. It did not matter what your race was.
Right.
Now, it's a completely different ball game because, as you said, Marxism, feminism, and Leninism, whatever coin of socialism, communism you want to say, it is in the hearts of the American kids.
Absolutely. Well, going back to crack cocaine was invented during the Vietnam War. So they most definitely had something in mind of a nefarious nature for the crack cocaine. It just happened to come out in the 1980s. So if the United States of America wasn't financing, the Contras, the crack cocaine would have eventually come out. Because, as you said, most of these things are actually orchestrated. I don't think it's an accident that, like, now you have the majority white Americans dealing with what African Americans were dealing with back in the 1980s. So absolutely.
Do you think that's on purpose? The Chinese are taking out the whites as payback for what happened in the Opium Wars?
I've spoken on that, in the past. The karma, the payback from the two opium wars, so,
can you go a little bit into, just a little Cliff Notes version of what the Opium's War were when the white man forced the Chinese and their people to be hooked on heroin?
Yeah, it was economics.
Yes.
Basically, the United States of America and the UK, or Great Britain at that time.
Which was the big brother at that time.
Right. They had things to trade with China that China did not necessarily want or need.
Correct.
However, China had what the West, I'll just say the West, United States, Great Britain, China had what the West wanted, which was the opium. China, being moralistic at that time, knew the dangers of opium. So it was very, 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 very regulated. They did use it for medicinal purposes. But in order to get China to trade with the West devised a very Machiavellian, a very nefarious plan to hook the Chinese people on opium in order to destabilize them. And they were very successful with that. But it turned China upside down. And so China, its government, came with the pushback. And the West didn't like that. The West did not like the pushback of China, which was basically, hey, no opium. We're ending this. We can trade, but we're not going to be dealing with this opium. And the West didn't like that. So the West actually went to war with China and spanked them in order for them to do business the way the West wanted to do, which involved the opium. It's like, look, these people are going to have to be opium addicts in order for us to do what we want to do.
Not once, but twice.
I'm actually going there. I'm actually going there. So after the first Opium War, China got spanked and things went back to normal. The Chinese people were opiate heads. China, being defiant against the West, said, even though we signed these treaties, because they spanked China to sign the treaty, China said, we got to do something for our people. And again, they went to war. China went to war against opium. That brought on the Opium War number 2, the Second Opium War, which resulted in the same outcome as the first one. China got spanked again and lost even more territory. Shanghai, there was a bay area in China that was used to bring the fleets in from the West Coast. China lost even more territory. China had to give up more than it gave up during the first Opium War. And that was it.
They became second-class citizens that was in their own country.
After the Second Opium War, it was a wrap. The West pretty much owned China.
And I just want to say this. Yes, what America and the big brother at the time, the UK and other nations like France and the Dutch, let's not leave them out.
Right.
What they did was, barbaric, no doubt about it. But we also want to point out that the Chinese were the first to discover gunpowder.
True.
And they built this big wall because they decided that they were superior compared to everyone else. They decided everyone else was a barbarian. They cut off trade with everybody. And then all of a sudden, 300 years later, Americans in the UK come with gunboats. So again, this goes to show you, if you think you're going to be superior, no matter what your race is, it's going to come around. It's going to come around. So I want to point that out too. When we go to the African slave trade, the Nigerians were the trade masters. They were going in and enslaving all the other tribes and selling them to the white man and the Arabs and everyone else. Is that not right, Djehuty?
Yeah, these were prisoners of wars. A lot of people don't really understand that when you start dealing with Native Americans and Africans and Indians, these were not, peaceful societies, peace in the sense that we have peace. The Europeans are not here. We have no problem. That wasn't the case. There have always been internal conflict on all continents, all countries. So in Africa, their POWs were the first to be enslaved. They were selling off their POWs, not necessarily members of their own tribes, but other tribes. That's how the African slave trade began, with selling POWs, prisoners of wars, Africans enslaving other Africans and then selling them to Europeans who took them to the West, and we know the rest.
But it was mainly the Nigerians, right?
Well, not mainly. The Nigerians were a part of it, but your tribes in West Africa, your tribes in West Africa had more Africans transported than Nigeria, any other parts of Africa, especially the deeper you go into the continent, the less you had POWs. So it was more convenient for it to be the slave trade was more convenient, predicated upon West Africa, which was closer to the West.
Okay. When we talk about the slave trade, most of the ships during the slave trade were basically Jewish. Yes. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Most of the slave traders were Arabs, correct?
Correct.
Why is the white man always the one who's vilified for slavery? And I'm not saying he didn't have a role in it, but why is the white man always vilified for this when it was the Jewish ships and the Arabs that were actually the biggest part of the slave trade?
Well, you have to look at who is dominant in history as far as academia is concerned, literature, the publishing houses. Most of them are Jewish ran. So it's just like with the mafia. Most people think Italian when it comes to the mafia, but it's really Jewish. Jews were behind the books. Meyer Lansky was the banker of the mafia. He handled the books. So it's like with everything else. The Jews will be behind the scenes and they'll put the blame on whites. They'll put the blame on Italians or the blames on others. That's how they stay hidden to do their thing.
Even Jews themselves, because mainly it's Zionists running the show.
True. And then when we deal with slavery, you had a lot of Jews who owned the boats, who did a lot of the financing. But why is it that Black Americans or African Americans generally don't know that?
Who created the NAACP?
You see, Jews.
There you go.
You see, but going back to slavery. Now, there's a book, The Secret Relationship Between Blacks and Jews.
Yes,
then there are several other ones. If I had a picture of my library, I have about 50 books.
The transfer agreement.
Well, that's not dealing with the African American or the African slave trade, but
with Nazi Germany and stuff like that.
The Germans, and the Jews going to Palestine, what have you. Along the same lines, But, growing up, we never heard about Jews. Like there's a book entitled We Thought They Were White, but it's dealing with Jews. There's a separation between Jews and whites, because growing up, I didn't know the difference between Jews and white. I thought Jews were white. I just thought it was just the white
exactly
race.
What they wanted you to think.
Well, I did. They got me. They did a job on me until I started educating myself. And then I began to study. So you're hearing a lot of white dudes are very upset today, right? White nationalism. We're supposed to be KKKs, Nazis, or what have you. And a lot of them don't know who's behind that. And we're still dealing with Khazarians, or so-called Jews, who are, again, pointing that finger, putting whites out front, and they're in the backdrop being protected. Blacks are not doing it. We don't have the power to do all these things that a lot of whites are upset about, right? I'm on Twitter a lot, so I'm seeing the stories every single day. My girl Dane she's good to put up the stories about, the blacks doing things to whites and, shooting them and killing them and beating them or what have you. And these type of things are going on. But you have to understand that African Americans don't have the power to turn things around whereby whites have traded places with blacks, right? Whites are victims, white racism, we're being left out, diversity is not including us and all of these things. African Americans, Black Americans don't have that power. Latinos don't have that power. Native Americans don't have that power.
That's a good point.
They don't have the power.
So it's someone, in your opinion, behind the scenes,
absolutely,
who's pushing the minorities and making the majority, in this case, white America, hate the minorities, but it's always a hidden hand. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
And man, they're doing it so successfully. I sit back and I watch the interactions. And I'm like, wow, man, these people, man, they have really done their job. And the majority of white Americans, the majority of Black Americans, man, they're going for it. This is why you hear so much talk about a race war, more than any time ever. That's because that agenda is so successful. And both of them are being played.
Okay.
Both.
You are a man that's went through pretty much every philosophy, every religion that I pretty much can see as mainstream, and some there are not. You were part of, or you dabbled with the Muslim Brotherhood, not the Muslim Brotherhood, Nation of Islam. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your experience with the Nation of Islam. Do they actually teach people that the white man's the devil?
That is a part of the teachings. When I was in the Nation of Islam, I believed a lot of the tenets and the principles, the beliefs of the Nation of Islam in my early days, right? Young, looking for identity, needing someone to be the victor in order to justify myself being the victim. So I ate a lot of stuff up, I ate it up well.
Did Farrakhan have a strong part in that?
Well, he was the leader of the Nation of Islam.
That's what I'm trying to say. Did his charisma have an effect on you like that? Because he is a very charismatic man.
Well, partly, but Farrakhan is teaching the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who's teaching the teachings of Master Farad Muhammad, so it wasn't just Farrakhan, because I bought a lot of Elijah Muhammad tapes, so I had Farrakhan tapes, I had Malcolm X tapes when Malcolm was in the Nation. So I had all of the tapes, and it was all saying the same thing, and I believed in that. When you're disempowered and you see yourself as a victim, it's easier for you to embrace that philosophy. And I embraced it for like several years. It made sense to me. Like, aha, this is why I'm catching so much hell. The white man is the devil, but I never paid attention to listening to NWA, Fuck the Police, and then being pulled over by the police. I didn't understand the energy back then. I didn't understand the law of attraction. I didn't understand the role that I was playing. Wearing a T-shirt, gold chain, jeans, Jerry curl, fitting the description. I never looked at the role that I play. And I'm not letting anybody like off the hook, because I got pulled over 12 times in a 1 year period. And I never got a ticket. So I'm not saying that, racial profiling and all these things we hear about are not real, but, being a spiritualist, it takes two to tango.
So when you're getting pulled over, you're not saying, yo, motherfucker, what the fuck you pull me over, you bitch ass swine. You're not doing stuff like that.
I've never been like that. Even when I had the negative emotion when I was pulled over back in the 80s and the 90s, I never spoke like that, And in all due honesty, Gary, there was that fear element there. These are cops, number one. They're backed by the state. They have authority. They're white. So these guys have a badge to kill me and get away with it. That's my mindset, So it's more of the respect back then was more fear-based, unskillfully fear-based. But when I taught myself law in the early 2000s, same white cops, LAPD, LA County sheriffs, it didn't matter. There was no fear, but there was still respect, though. I always respected them, but it was no fear. That was gone. That was neutralized. I turned things around. You see, now, how did I do that? I educated myself. I became legally astute. I had to stop watching football and basketball. I had to stop watching entertainment and the rap videos, what have you. I had to put some knowledge in my head. I had to read the California Vehicle Code. I signed the application to receive a license. I had to read the California Vehicle Code. I was in the state of California, so I was under the statutes of the state of California. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. You see, so I had to turn off all the bullshit, and I had to put some knowledge in my head, and that's what I did. And so when I got pulled off, I've only been pulled over twice in the 2000s. And both of those times I humiliated, civilly speaking, that is, I humiliated law enforcement. And it was the same thing back in the 80s and 90s. There was no probable cause or reasonable suspicion. And mastering law, man, I mastered law so good, these guys thought I set them up.
Who thought you set him up?
The city of Glendale. They thought I set them up like he's doing an insurance scam because my stuff was so smooth. See, I had learned the difference between an infraction, a misdemeanor, and a felony. Most of your traffic citations, your traffic violations, they're infractions. California Penal Code 19.6 clearly states that an infraction is an offense not punishable by imprisonment.
You spitting them numbers. I'm
like, yeah, I told you, just like how you do with numerology when it comes to law. Same thing, my brother.
You know every single penal code?
I know every aspect of the penal code that applies to my solution of not being charged, keeping my money in my pocket, and not going to jail.
And that's how you say fuck the man with the law.
Civilly, respectfully, and get top-notch respect. To have the police shake your hand and say, hey, you're the most intelligent citizen that we've ever spoken to. This is FBI, this is the Glendale PD, this is the state of California. This is multiple government agencies shaking my hand, telling me, a black man, that I am the most intelligent American or citizen that they have ever encountered. I am from South Central Los Angeles and never been to college, too dumb, didn't have the money, didn't have the motivation, from the streets, dabbled Nation of Islam, pro-black, radicalism, a whole bunch of stuff, and ended up where I am today. Getting top-notch respect.
Could you have done that in any other country in the world? Flat out.
I have no idea because I'm from the United States of America. All I can say is that I understand there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the United States of America, but it's still the land of opportunity. And even though I haven't been as a black man, now the reason why I'm unable, not unwilling, but unable to answer that is because I haven't been to all the other countries in the world.
Give me your gut opinion.
But my gut opinion, I would have to say the United States of America, hands down. I don't, I know there's democracy, so-called democracy in France and,
where
Germany and all
they
these
force
places.
you to take the right.
Right. Mm-hmm. So the United States of America, I would most definitely have to say is the land of opportunity and is that country whereby I have the opportunity to educate myself. And this is why, Gary, it's difficult to talk about the issues of black Americans. It's very difficult because I know the history and I know the history well. However, I understand opportunity. Now, I understand what took place in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, but we're in the 2000s. This is 2023. I have the opportunity to continue to educate myself. Everything that I'm doing, every other black American can do the same thing. There's nothing holding you back from learning the law. See, I learned that I could purchase the same law books that the lawyers could purchase and that the judges could purchase. Wes Thompson, annotated codes. I never forgot that. And when I went in to purchase it, sure, I had the money. They sold it to me. And after I took it home and went through it, reading the statutes, reading the codes like Malcolm X read the dictionary, man, it was on and popping, taking notes, what have you. Man, it was on and popping. Straight empowering, man. Straight empowering. I've been pulled over twice. And I won both of those cases, filing paperwork as if I was a lawyer, like this was a major case. It was a traffic case. Traffic is so minor, but it makes a lot of money.
You wanted to fuck with them. You wanted to fuck with them,
but the truth of the matter, I had a lot of revenge to get back because I got punked. Boy, I got punked so much, man, and lost so much money. It did feel good getting them back, but I didn't do it to get back at them. I did it to test the law because I was in the so-called sovereignty in the early 2000s. And I believed in the law at that time. And I began to see that what was on paper was not really being carried out. It was the same thing that Dr. Martin Luther King was saying, just be true to what you said on paper. That's what I was doing with the law. There's a lot of good laws on the books that they will not give to us because we're corporate slaves today, and I was really good. I was one of the very few people, man, that could really go in that system and come out on the other side, unscathed, not jaded, not destroyed, what have you. Same goes for like divorce, we can talk about that later. I was one of the few people, man, that could really go through that system and come out on the other side.
Didn't Wesley Snipes try to do that?
Yeah, Wesley attempted to He was sovereign, but he attempted to do some things that I don't advocate, which is you don't pimp slap the government. Now, if you learn sovereignty and you're doing certain things as an individual, the government is not going to mess with you.
Sovereign citizen.
If you're a so-called sovereign citizen, and I know people, that's an oxymoron. You can't be sovereign and a citizen at the same time because a citizen is a slave. So please spare me on that. I'm just speaking for the sake of the podcast.
Of course.
But Wesley was doing certain things that he was successful in for certain years. And he made the mistake deciding to go public with his tax returns, trying to get more money than he was really justified in having. He tried to get 40 million. 10 million, he tried to get 40 million. There's like a little scam component, a monetary component to this whole sovereignty where people try to get money out of it. And that's the downfall of most people.
Greed.
And Wesley was one of those dudes. And he says, the attorneys were the ones who, miseducated him.
You advised him different, though, didn't you?
I advise a lot of people not to do certain things. Like, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give legal advice.
Of course.
But, I can talk to you in an educational sense. I can share education with you.
He's not a lawyer. If you ever watch the show Suits, he's not a lawyer like that guy, Mike, who's not a lawyer. This guy over here knows law like I know numerology. And even though you haven't passed the bar, correct?
No, I've never taken the bar, and I never will.
You could probably pass in your sleep if you wanted to. But this is what you remind me, Djehuty. You remind me the biggest, baddest fighter. But you're not even going to go into the UFC because that's not even worth your time. You're so past that level. You're like over here when it comes. What type of work do you have to put into, brother, to get to that level where you basically memorize the freaking penal code?
You got to want freedom, man. You got to want power. I'm talking about personal freedom, personal power. It has to be personal. And, when you look at my lifestyle, the early years of my lifestyle, man, I was punked, man, running from the police, running from the Crips, running from the Bloods. You're not empowered, man. And it just doesn't feel good. You're broke. You don't have any money. You can't really approach certain females because you don't have your snaps together. It's just
no money, no honey.
Man, it's just a whole bunch of stuff, brother, that just doesn't make you feel good. And so, when you can look at that as one side of the spectrum, and that there's the opposite side of the spectrum, which is, everything that you don't have on this side, you can have it. And I want to get on the opposite side. I want to get on the other side of the rainbow. And I knew what I had to do to get there. And that was doing everything differently. So all the homeboys were partying and clubbing and drinking and acting a fool and just doing all that crazy stuff. I couldn't do it. Number one, I didn't have it in me to do anyway, but I wasn't going to do that. I knew it was up here. It was the mind. The mind is all. Knowledge, we say knowledge is power, but really it's the application of knowledge. You have to acquire knowledge first and foremost, then you have to apply it. A lot of people got knowledge, they just don't apply it.
It's kind of like a lot of people have 100, 200K on Twitter and Instagram. They can't make no money.
Right.
They can't make no money, though.
Absolutely.
Isn't that crazy?
It's the equivalent of the poor righteous teacher, And I'm like, wait a minute, the poor righteous teacher, that don't sound right to me. Like poor righteous teacher. So if you're righteous and you teach people, you're going to be poor. I was like, no, I got to turn that around. So in the early 2000s, I came up with spiritual baller. Everybody was balling back then, but it was material balling. I'm like, there's a lot of competition in material balling. And there's so much room over here in the spiritual domain, in the intellectual domain, and especially, for my community, I said, I'm going over there. I'm a ball on that side over there, the spiritual ballerism. And I did it for spiritual, intellectual reasons, first and foremost. And the money followed.
I always have a saying.
The money followed.
I always have the saying, Djehuty, it doesn't matter what the fuck you do. I don't care if you're a trash man. I don't care if you're a meteorologist. I don't care if you're a UFC fighter or you're mopping the goddamn bathroom. If you're the best of the best at whatever the fuck you do,
that's right.
Guess what? The money's going to come.
It's
I promise you, it doesn't matter what you do. First of all, he didn't finish college.
I never went to college. No, I never went.
This man he's black. He never went to college and he's a multi-millionaire, and you guys over here are telling me about white privilege. You guys over here are telling me how you need reparations. How come you can't do what this man did? Oh, I'm sorry, you're out there fucking with these hoes. That's what it is.
Stupid
how
stuff.
many men have you seen in your life, Djehuty, who had great potential to do things, and that vice grip got them?
You know, growing up in the hood, man, I recognized so much talent. I knew dudes who were better than Michael Jordan. They just didn't have that discipline, the mental discipline. They couldn't get into University of North Carolina because they didn't apply their minds. And a lot of them wanted the easy way out. You know, they wanted they wanted things quickly without, paying their dues. So I saw a lot of wasted talent. I saw a lot of incarcerated or arrested development, but a lot of it was self-induced. See, Gary, when you're in that trap and looking out, you see everybody else. You see white folks, Jews, Asian, you see everybody else, and you're here, you see. But once you get out, you begin to see things differently, like, damn, okay. It's like Pinocchio, Jiminy Cricket represents Christ consciousness. And so when you tap into, Christ consciousness, which is by means of spirituality, man, you get to open the cage and you get to come out. And when you come out and you look back, you see all the things that you were doing that kept you in the cage. You could have always exited, but you was looking at the quote unquote females or the hoes, what have you, the alcohol, the drugs, gang banging, what have you. Like, you were distracted, and there was no gun to your head. You were distracted because in the late 80s, when I said, hey, listen, I'm about to go read the autobiography of Malcolm X. All right. And I suggest that you guys start reading. Man, fuck that shit, cuz. We about to lift some weights, man. We're going to get the hoes, cuz. We're going to smoke the blunts. We're going to drink. They had a choice. There was no white man on the scene. Seriously, there was no, this man laughing. There was no white man or whoever else on the scene then. We had free will. Now, I was doing my thing. They were doing their thing, predicated upon free will. Now, I knew my thing would get me to where I am right now, and I knew what they were doing was going to get them to where they are right now, which is, into oblivion and running from the authorities, can't pay child support.
You ever see a bodybuilder in the White House?
No, and absolutely. And it's ironic that you bring them up because my little brother was a bodybuilder. I won every competition that he was in. But I used to listen to the discourse between my father and my little brother, and I took the wisdom that was really for my little brother. I took it and applied and said, you know what? Hey, man, I was born skinny. I've been skinny my entire life. And so growing up in the hood where cats lift weights and they get real big, a lot of them go to jail and they lift weights and they come out on swole. All I would hear was like, yo, man, you need to lift these weights with us, man. You need to come to the gym, man. You need to, smoke some blunt, man. Come with us and chase these holes. That's all I heard growing up. But it was just something in me. Man, it was just something in me that I just didn't resonate with that. And then I began to accept myself. So I'm like, okay, you know what? Screw it. I don't want the quote unquote holes. I don't want that lifestyle. Like, I'm about to go in this direction here. I don't know where it's going to lead to, but I'm going to wear my suits. I'm going to be civilized. I'm going to groom myself. My hair's going to be cut every 2 weeks. I'm a Taurus, so fashion was huge. I'm going to look good. I'm going to dress good. I'm going to be intelligent. I'm going to educate myself. I'm going to edify myself. And I don't know where it's going to lead, but that's where I'm going.
So you're acting white.
No, it's not acting white.
That's what people down the way say.
No, this is acting intelligent. And see, African Americans are the ones who do that. Were you talking white? You talking this? You talking that? I had dinner with a friend here Sunday, and it was just really sad to hear her say how people say that she's whitewashed or she talks white or she wants to be white. And it's none of those things. She just talks proper. She talks appropriately. She enunciates. She uses, standard English, not substandard, but standard. She uses formal English, not informal. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with speaking informally or substandard when you have to, but when you're stuck there, it's a problem. It's like people who party in club. Like, that's cool for a minute, but when you make it a lifestyle, then you screw yourself. You see, I sacrificed my 20s so that I could be free in my 30s, my 40s, my 50s, my 60s, my 70s, and be straight for life until my final days. I sacrificed my 20s. There's 10 years in a decade. Well, in 1993, I went celibate for the first time from 1993 to 1997. and I did it again. Yeah, it was from 93, 97. Then I did it again from 2001 to 2005.
Brother, I've been married for 20 years. I can't even hear that.
So, well, I'm just, that's what I had to do. I had to clear my mind. I had to, retain my semen.
You living like a freaking monk out here.
Well, I want to live. I got to do things differently.
I got you.
Everybody's chasing the hoes, busting nuts and masturbating, porn, what have I had to do the opposite. If you do the opposite in the matrix, you are going to be fine. And I don't care what your race is, what your gender is, what have you. If you do the opposite of the sheep, of the unilinears, you're going to be fine. That's what I did. I had to do the opposite. There's nobody in my family that's living like me, that experienced life like me.
Djehuty, before we go further, people are asking in the chat, how do they get a hold of you? Do you have a website? How do people, get to you?
I'm mentoring people now, and I'm glad you brought that up because there are some young brothers that I mentor. They're on the East Coast, and they just set up their business, Mandingo.com. That's spelled MANDYNGO.com. And those brothers did what I always wanted to do, but I was just so busy and it never got off the ground. And they specialize in male sexual health products, man. And I'm really proud of those brothers, Mandingo.com. And I only mention them for like products, okay? And then I have some young sisters that I mentored in California, and they run DivineMedicinals.com. Now, I'm more available through those sisters through DivineMedicinals.com. If the people contact if they go to DivineMedicinals.com and use the contact and ask for Djehuty, they'll forward it to me.
Okay. How do people find you on social media? What's your Twitter?
I'm only on Twitter right now.
Only Twitter?
Only Twitter.
Are you gonna fuck around with others?
Because when you ban me from Facebook, YouTube, what have you, I'm done. If Twitter bans me, I'm gone. I don't return. I don't go back. That's my personal policy.
I think Elon Musk is going to make sure you're just fine, man.
Well, I hope so, because when he took over, I got suspended for 1 week. And again, it's always dealing with the whole Jewish question, because, when you study history, right, number one, you learn, I'm talking about true history, you learn a lot of things, right? And then when you're a truth seeker, you share it. And so when it comes to a lot of things pertaining to World War II, I see a lot of things that a lot of people just never heard. And I do it in respectful fashion, civil fashion. But you have a lot of people out there who want to maintain the status quo and maintain certain histories. They don't like that. So Germany will send you a little message, what you're saying is, violate laws in Germany. It's I've never been to Germany.
So if I say Germany's 0-2 in wars, that could be a violation. If I say the French troops ran like they were in the Olympics when they saw the Germans, that could be a violation too.
Only dealing like with Germany, because Germany is property of like Israel these days. Like they're really kissing like.
So
booty.
Germany's Israel's bitch.
Absolutely. And Germany is one of the 17 nations where it's a crime to even question or analyze the Holocaust. And so I've been on Twitter saying, hey, listen, I got a problem with any country that bans free speech. It's one thing to disagree, but it's another thing to ban or to censor. You see, if you're intelligent.
Let me push back on that.
Okay.
So you don't have no problem with communists, with pedophiles. I'm asking, you have no problem with them spreading their propaganda, or you wouldn't shut it down if you could?
Well, here's my thing. I have a problem with all of those things.
Yes.
But I don't believe censorship is the way. I believe education is the way.
What about haram?
And that's religious. And if you're in and of that faith, then, free speech, First Amendment, what have you, do your thing. Now, in this country here, there are some things that can land you into trouble, with the law, because unfortunately, we're not a law-abiding nation as we should be. So this is why there's so much hell being caught today. So what I would do, and this is what I espouse, you should teach people the truth. If you teach people the truth, then the people would be intelligent enough to know that, hey, we can get off into the thing there because it's all about procreation. Biology in and of itself is truth. The penis is made to penetrate the vagina.
Yeah, of course.
You're saying of course, but there are other people out there who are like, that's not true. I've had people tell me that's not true. Have you had a dick in your ass?
But you're telling me if it was you and you were in control of things, you would not shut down these people from spreading their propaganda to minors and things like that. If you had the power to do it, you wouldn't do it.
If I played the political game then I would be like your so-called fascist. I would do what Adolf Hitler did. I would do what General Franco did.
One of my heroes.
I would do what those men did.
Not Hitler, Franco. I had to say that.
in order to save the society. See, what a lot of people don't know is that the fascism that we have today is not the fascism of the 1940s and the 30s and going back, because when the fascists lost World War II, the West changed the definition of fascism. It's not the same. So if I have the books. I've invested thousands of dollars into the books. So I have the information, the true information of the fascists, and have read it. And it's good stuff. You see, 1/3 of my library is on the Third Reich. So I've studied the literature. And so this is why I can say the things that I say. There's a lot of things that so-called German, I don't like to use the term Nazi because, that's a Western word. They were the National Socialists. Those people did a lot of things that if the United States of America did today, we would be in better shape. So-called Nazi Germany was Christian. America started as a Christian nation. She's gotten away from that. America has more love for LGBTQ, pedophilia, necrophilia, all of these toxic, dirty, sinister things. America has more love for those things, especially in a political sense, right? Especially dealing with government. They have more love for those things than they do for the founding principles of this nation, including Christianity. See, when you lose God or get rid of God, which this country did in the 1960s during the administration of President Kennedy, who was my favorite president. Now,
mine too.
Okay, now I've never registered to vote, but if I was in the game, I would vote for a Kennedy. I would vote for a Donald Trump. But unfortunately, during his reign, the United States Supreme Court, they took God out of schools. Out of the public, anything that was public, the public domain, but especially schools, they took God out. And then they took the Bible out the following year.
But don't we want a secular society?
No, I think what you want is a society predicated upon the principles in which that nation was founded. You see, there are a lot of people, I catch a lot of hell when I talk about the founding fathers and the founding principles, what have you. I understand it too, because they don't study government. They don't study politics. They don't study civics. They don't study government. They don't study law. So I understand why people disagree with me, but I've studied all those things. I've put my money where my heart is, okay, where my soul is. And so I understand these things. So this country was founded upon some great principles, even if a lot of the founders didn't go by them. If you just look at the principles, like my man Clarence Thomas said, the principles, man, are awesome. The problem was we just didn't go by them, and we damn sure don't go by them today. And that's why the United States of America, really, technically speaking, is the United States Corporation, United States Inc., is in the shape that it is in today. She has deviated. Ben Franklin.
Sinister bitch.
Ben Franklin, the wife of the mayor of Philadelphia after the Constitutional Convention, she inquired of Ben Franklin. She said, "What type of government do we have now?" That man said, "A republic, if you can keep it. If you can keep it. We have a republic if you can keep it. You got a duty. In order to keep the republic, you have a duty." And the biggest element of that duty was remaining vigilant. Even Thomas Jefferson said that freedom requires vigilance. Your eyes must be open in order to keep the republic. The republic is lost today because when you listen to most people, you hear the word democracy coming out of their mouths.
That's mob rule.
You see, absolutely is mob rule. Now, when you read the United States Constitution, okay, Article 4, Section 4 says this Congress shall guarantee to every state of the Union a Republican form of government. How in the hell do you go to a democracy today? That document, that founding document, the Constitution mentions republic. It doesn't mention democracy. When you say or state the Pledge of Allegiance, you don't mention democracy.
Nope.
You say to the republic for which it stands. You don't say to the democracy of which or to which it stands. You say to the republic, Okay, the battle hymn of the republic, not of the democracy. Where did democracy come from? It is Marxism. It all goes back to Marxism. It all goes back to Karl Marx, who wanted to destroy the West. And as I tell people, they've done a damn good job, and they're actually finishing us off. They are hammering that nail into the coffin. They're hammering the last nail into the coffin.
The family
Marxism.
unit. The family unit's about to go.
Marxism was against the family. I have a book called Socialism, and it deals with the destruction of the family so that the people can turn to the state, the socialist state. And how do you do that? You have to separate the man from the woman. And when you do that, you have the woman and the child. Then you have to separate the woman from the child. And you do that with public education. Hey, listen, I tell people, if the United States of America is not communist in nature, why is it that all 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto is in effect in the United States of America? I challenge everybody who's watching this podcast to go look up the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. You're going to see public education. You're going to see public education. You're going to see the income tax, a gradual and progressive income tax. These things are all unconstitutional. They're all anti-America. That's why we're in the predicament that we're in today. We're ignorant. You said, would I not suppress or stop and all this stuff here? I would educate the people. You see, one of the reasons why National Socialist Germany was so strong in what they believed in, you can knock them all day, but Adolf Hitler had a 99% approval rate. That means that the people got behind him. You can't say that these people were stupid. Germany had the brightest minds in the world at that time, especially of the Western world.
They had a lot of help from Zionists, let's be real.
Well,
I mean, the National Socialists start with an NA, Zionist starts with ZI,
I hear you.
ZI. So they basically made an agreement. They were funding money to them.
They worked together.
They built that Nazi machine, and then they went to work and they made sure that Nazi machine was destroyed.
See, the Zionists were using what the National Socialists were doing.
Yes.
So, but to constantly say that Hitler knew about Zionism, that he was a member and things like that, that's erroneous. If you look at that man's work during that time, that man was 100% pro the German people. That man was 100% pro-Christian. His works speak for itself. No other Western country has done what Germany from 1933 to 1945 has done. The people got behind that man. It is an insult to say that those people were the victims of propaganda as if they couldn't think. They had some of the most brilliant minds on planet Earth during that time. Albert Einstein came from Germany.
No, there's no doubt. But the Zionists did help build that machine.
Yeah, the Zionists helped, the capitalists, the Western capitalists helped, so, but it was indirectly though.
Okay, so
it was indirectly.
But let's ask, why did they help Hitler in the first place?
Because they had an agenda. They wanted Palestine. They wanted Israel.
They wanted the Jews moving. They wanted to get the herd moving.
Absolutely.
If you're basically a Jew in 1930 Germany, why would you want to go to Palestine?
Right.
You're in the best country in the world for Jews at that time. And they got the herd moving, and that's why they give money to Hitler to get the herd moving.
They had an agenda.
Palestine.
Yeah, they had an agenda. So you were not going to get Jews in England or in Europe, in the United States of America, who were living it up. You weren't going to get them to give that up to go to the desert, because Palestine was pretty much the desert back then.
Correct.
So the Nazi party, Adolf Hitler, they were the boogeyman. And so the boogeyman was the excuse that they needed to get the Jews in Europe, not in the West, not in England, not in America, but in Germany, especially in Germany, but Poland, and the surrounding nations to go to the desert to build up Israel for the Zionists. And I want to make a correction right quick. When I talk about Jews, Jews are not singular. There's Zionist Jews,
Correct.
There's Talmudic, what have you.
Yes.
So a lot of people think, Jew, he's anti-Semitic.
And by the way, I'm Jewish.
Oh, so you see what I'm saying?
So I'm not a Zionist, by the way.
That's the big difference. Okay,
I'm 100%.
So you Zionist, you got Talmudic, you got Frankists, what have you, and so a lot of people don't understand that. Jews and Zionists.
That's a lesson Kanye West should learn, because if he actually presented his case differently and not said, I'm going to go ape shit on Jews, instead he should have said, I'm going to expose Zionists. He would still probably be a billionaire.
Absolutely. So I want to point that out because a lot of people don't know that. Jew is a Jew. And it's like, no. Same thing with Islam. Same thing with Christianity. There's always sects and different factions, what have you. So real quickly, dealing with 1933, 1945 Germany, the Zionists most definitely had an agenda in financing the National Socialists and helping the Jews get out of Germany to go to the desert, not to America, because PBS just put out a great documentary on the U.S. and the Holocaust. And when you watch that documentary, you see how the United States of America prevented Jews from coming into America. England did the same thing as well, too. And that's a part of history that
I think that was done on purpose.
We don't. Of course, it's all political.
100%.
We have Israel today because of World War II. You talked about the Farhud or the agreement?
Transfer agreement.
The transfer agreement, the Farhud. That was dealing with Palestine.
Correct.
Transporting the Jews from Germany. And
the deal was like this. Hitler said, we are not letting the Jews take the money and just flee to Palestine. So they would have to deposit their money, and then what they would get is farm equipment made by German workers sent to Israel. And that's how they started using the land. They wouldn't let them actually take the money, but they took the money, put in the accounts, and made them build things in Germany and sent that to Israel and Palestine.
Here's what a lot of people don't know. Adolf Hitler allowed each Jew to take 90% of their income with them. What most people don't know is that Hitler invested 50 million Reichsmark to help the Jews leave Germany and go to Palestine. Adolf Hitler had put land aside in Germany for the Jews. Adolf Hitler did not have the intention of killing Jews. He just wanted them out. A lot of people don't understand that there were a lot of Jews in Germany at a time when Jews were catching hell, had the yellow star, what have you. There were hundreds of thousands of Jews still benefiting from German politics at the time. Hell, Hitler's own doctor was Jewish. Helene Meyer was in the Olympics in, 1936. Helene Meyer, she was Jewish. There are several books out on Hitler's Jewish soldiers. Hitler had over 100,000 Jews in his military, and those Jews did not turn against Germany.
It's their homeland.
Exactly. You see, so when I said earlier that I've invested a lot of money into books.
You spend more money on books than some people have on drugs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and this subject here, I've just spent a good 30,000, at least a good 30,000 on World War II. 1/3 of that being on the National Socialists, because I had to look at the fact, Gary, of why Adolf Hitler is the boogeyman of history. And I'm the type of person, you just can't tell me anything and I'm going to believe it. I have to know for myself. And that's just not with Hitler. That's what 9/11. That's what the Titanic. That's what World War I. That's what the Vietnam War. That's what all of this stuff. All of this stuff is predicated upon so-called conspiracy, which is really revisionist history that I've looked into, and I've come out with the truth. As a little boy, I've always wanted the truth as a little boy. That's why I got into the Manson murders, like what really happened. I was freaked out from the Manson murders. And when I did my own research, I found out that Charles Manson was not the dude they made him out to be. Charles Manson never murdered anybody.
What?
Manson never murdered anybody.
Come again?
Charles Manson never murdered anybody. Charles Manson was convicted under the California Penal Code Section 182 for conspiracy. Charles Manson had other people go out and murder. Manson himself never murdered.
Well, that's a crime too, telling other people to kill people.
But all law is precise, so they got him for conspiracy. Charles Manson was not convicted for homicide. California Penal Code Section 187. Manson was not convicted for that.
He's spending them numbers, man.
I mean, it's just all about truth, though. I'm not saying Manson is a great person.
Yeah,
we have to just be factual. Manson himself never killed anybody. You see, there's a book out dealing with Manson and the CIA and Operation Chaos. Manson was a product of Operation Chaos. We go right back to the CIA, and that's who primed Charles Manson from age 2. Just like the Zodiac Killer, you talked about how these things are created, what have you. Well, these serial killers are a part of that, you know.
MK Ultra?
MK Ultra, but then also too, just, you know, creating havoc in the society, making the people fearful because they feed off that energy. You see, and then the people are more susceptible to buy into certain things. So when you look at a Charles Manson, he served a purpose. Who did Charles Manson get his LSD? They had something called Orange Sunshine. That was the name of their LSD, which is a very potent form, Orange Sunshine. Where did Manson get it from? CIA. Now, see, they had me believing that Charles Manson sent those people to the house on Cielo Drive, the Polanski Tate house, to kill those people, right? Just, you know, go and just kill whoever, right? But then you read Helter Skelter, it was about Terry Melcher. Manson was mad at Terry Melcher, who was a record producer who didn't give Manson his chance, and Manson wanted retribution. He wanted revenge against Terry Melcher. And so that's why he sent those people to that house. It wasn't about Terry Melcher. Manson had met with Terry Melcher after the murders, and Terry Melcher dropped his knees and asked for forgiveness. Vincent Bugliosi, who I used to look up to, was a damn fraud. You read that book, the latest book out on the Manson murders, Manson, the CIA, and Operation Chaos. You get a lot of truth. That dude really did his homework. 20 years investigation. That book is on the one.
Djehuty, I can go literally hours with you.
Absolutely.
But what I want to go a little bit more into your story and your upbringing before we start hammering, because we can go here, here, and here. You can talk, brother, with the best of them. That mouthpiece, BPA, the Bills, Djehuty.
I've heard it.
Anyways, listen. Let's go back to your basically Nation of Islam.
Okay.
You are dabbling with the Nation.
Okay.
Why did you decide this ain't for you? Because you were with them for a while, and you were. So tell us, like, okay, what's the turning point that you say, you know what, this ain't for me?
Well, I was into the beauty of the Quran. You know, I like poetry and art. You know, I like maxims, you know, allegories, parables, you know, those things feed me. And so Islam offered the same thing Judaism and Christianity offered, you know. At that time, it was more cultural. You know, it addressed black people or African people, you know. So in the early 90s, I was into the cultural awareness, you know, searching for that cultural identity. So that's how I ended up in the Nation of Islam. It spoke to me. It resonated with me.
Who's the brother who got you in? Was it listening to Malcolm? Was it listening to Lewis? Who was it?
If I had to credit anybody, it would be Brother Adam Gordon, who was in the Nation and he had dropped out, but he would give me the tapes. He would give me the videos, and man, I resonated with it. You know, from the very first video that I watched, and I'm like, that's for me. That's for me.
What age?
I was 20, 19 or 20.
Okay.
Yeah. So if I had to mention a name, it would be Adam Gordon. But the truth of the matter was, I watched Eyes on the Prize, Volume 2, Episode 1. And that first episode was about the Nation of Islam, which highlighted Minister Malcolm X. And I resonated with Malcolm, but Malcolm was dead. So I'm like, damn, okay, who's in charge of that organization? It just happened to be Minister Louis Farrakhan. You see, so if Malcolm was the head of the Nation, I would have been in the Nation under Malcolm. So it just really didn't matter who the head was. That organization, it resonated with me. The philosophy, the ideology, all of those things, they resonated with me at that time. And that's why I joined. When
I look at Malcolm X and I look at, you know, his relationship with Cassius Clay, who was Muhammad Ali, Muhammad said that was his biggest mistake, was turning his back on Malcolm X.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I don't know as much about Malcolm as you. I don't think I know much about Black history as you or anyone else. But when it comes to Malcolm, I know he went to the Middle East and he did the pilgrimage, and he started looking around and he's like, wait a second, we got white Muslims here, we got Arab Muslims here. And that's when he started questioning what the Nation of Islam started teaching. And he came back there, and correct me if I'm wrong, he came back there and he's like, you know what? I'm not really down with this anymore. He started challenging the Honorable Minister Elijah Muhammad, correct?
Well, Malcolm used that as a stratagem because Malcolm had gone to the Middle East with Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1959, and he saw that in 1959 before he saw it in 1964. What a lot of people don't know is that Malcolm X wanted to come back to the Nation of Islam. And Elijah Muhammad, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, would not let him back in. So it was only when he couldn't get back in is when he decided to go orthodox, full force orthodox, and to have a, I don't want to say an excuse, but let's just say justification, to justify that move. He used his pilgrimage to Mecca, and he talked about seeing Muslims of different, races, white Muslims, what have you, and used that to justify why he was now orthodox and separated himself from the doctrine of the Nation of Islam, which was racist. The white man is the devil and all of that, and which wasn't true Islam. That's why Malcolm did that, and I think he did it pretty well. Regardless of why he did it well. Malcolm was a great representative of Orthodox Islam.
Okay. Malcolm steps up and he steps on the Nation of Islam's toes. He decides, I'm taking my own way. He takes some of their followers with him. All of a sudden, there's an issue. United States government doesn't like this guy too much.
Well, they never liked Malcolm, even when he was with the nation.
But they were okay with other people in the Nation of Islam. As a matter of fact, we'll get into this in a second. They actually protected, in my opinion, some people in the nation. We'll get into that in a second.
Okay.
But when it comes to Malcolm, the day he was killed, the police stopped all his bodyguards and arrested them. And then all of a sudden, he still goes to that event. And I believe it was the Nation of Islam, or at least his daughter believed it was the Nation of Islam members that killed him. So am I crazy to believe that the government in the Nation of Islam made a deal that went like this? We're going to stop his bodyguards and you take care of this brother. Is that off base?
It's similar to what we just talked about with Hitler and the transfer agreement and the Zionists working together. That's what was going on with the Nation of Islam and the government. The Nation of Islam and the government did not directly work together. There was an opportunity that the government saw and took. So the government had it out for Malcolm, and the nation had it out for Malcolm. And when the government realized that the nation had it out for Malcolm, they said, we'll just sit back and let these people carry it out. What a lot of people don't know is that the Nation of Islam had, government agents in it, FBI agents. Elijah Muhammad's a secretary, worked for the FBI, and it was brought to the attention of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and he spared that brother. And that got me to thinking, like, why would Elijah Muhammad do that? Because the doctrine that we were taught was that he was worthy of death, just like Malcolm. But this FBI informant who was close to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was never killed. Okay,
just like Hitler had a Jewish cook who was never killed.
It was, you see what I'm saying? So same thing. So it's like, wait a minute here. Y'all teaching us that if we are traitors and we betray the nation, the penalty is death. And this comes out and nothing happens to that dude. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad protects this dude here. And it's like, that don't sound right. So the guy who filmed the documentary, which was really a segment on CBS in the late 50s, early 60s, called The Hate That Hate Produced, Louis Lomax is his name. Louis Lomax became friends with Malcolm X. And Louis Lomax was the one who pointed out in a book, and I have those books, very, very, very rare, but I have those books. He pointed out that the Nation of Islam had an FBI agent. Book 1, he said that. Book 2, he named the guy who was the secretary. His name slips my mind right now, but he was the secretary. Well, the Nation of Islam, they came hard against Louis Lomax, saying, hey, you need to take this dude's name out of this book here because it was threatening his protection. And so that let you, he was like, hey, you're blowing his cover here, man. You're threatening this dude's protection here. This dude works for the government. So why would the Nation of Islam come hard against Louis Lomax, who points out the government agent who's in the Nation of Islam? Well, Louis Lomax conveniently dies in 1970s. His brakes went out.
Oh, wow.
Same thing.
What a coincidence.
Exactly. Same thing that happened to Malcolm Mac Wallace, who shot Kennedy from the depository.
That's got to be a coincidence.
You see, and it's like, man.
So many coincidences when it comes to the government.
Yeah, that co, when we deal with conspiracy, CO, that co. But no, it's not conspiracy. It's revisionist history that They just don't want us to study. This is why I'm against censorship. See, if you had a person like myself, yourself, and other people, and we could educate the people, we can get the people from day one, it'd be different. You wouldn't have to, say, hey,
yeah, but we're not in that boat anymore. I know, but the boat is taking in water at this point, brother. We got to have drastic measures at this point.
And I'm not again. I'm just saying that there was like another way that you will never see. If you properly educate the people, everything we're talking about ceases to exist. Now, we know that's not a reality, but I'm just saying it could be like that. So I'm not against drastic measures. I prefer the old way. Okay, you can exist, but the government needs to stay out of it. Don't force it down our throats. We don't need, laws or what have you. Everybody has the law of the 14th Amendment to protect them, but special laws, special statutes, I don't believe any special group needs that. If you just go by the Constitution, we'll be straight. If you go by the Constitution and you properly educate people, then we'll be straight.
My man, you studied Judaism, you studied Christianity, you studied Islam, you studied other things. Have you found any text anywhere that supports in any way whatsoever?
No.
I'll tell you what I have heard. This rock right here, haram. This is what I have heard. In all honesty, I'm not a big believer in Islam. I'm never going to go down my fours and start bowing. But I'll tell you what, I do believe in the sanctity of the family. I do believe that drinking alcohol is haram. I'll make an exception when Joe Biden dies, though. Hopefully Allah, forgives me. Last time I drank was when John McCain died. But I will tell you this. I believe feminism is the root of pretty much every single evil on the planet today. And I got to tell you something. Islam right here, and it has a cure.
When you deal with feminism, you have to understand that feminism came out of the Frankfurt School. That goes back to Germany.
Yes,
this
sir.
goes back to the Weimar Republic of the 1920s, actually 1919 to 1932, 1933.
Yep.
So that goes back to the Frankfurt School. Now, Hitler ran the Frankfurters out of Germany, and they came to the United States of America.
Correct.
And they set up shop in New York City at Columbia University. And then they branched out into Hollywood. So this is why academia and your entertainment are huge with promoting feminism. You see, that's not an accident. We're dealing with Frankfurters operating here in the United States of America.
They're all Marxist, okay? Communists, Marxists,
feminism is Marxist.
It's all the same crap, dude.
Feminism is a Marxist concept. Socialism, all of it, everything that's being used to destroy America, man, goes back to that one common denominator. You call it communism, you can call it socialism, Marxism, feminism. It's all the same. It all comes from the same root, and it has taken root in this country. And this is why the United States Inc. Corporation is the way that it is today. And we all know that things are different. We all know it. We feel it. It's not the same anymore. Rainbows, parades, women twerking, don't want to be covered up, don't want to be mothers. We know something is wrong. Like those of us who can remember the 1950s and the 1960s, things weren't perfect, but they were more wholesome.
Brother, I remember the 90s. We come from a much simpler time where the only thing we had to, combat was maybe racism.
Right.
Now they got sexism, homophobia. I mean, we came from way simpler times, man.
Right.
It was black, white, that's it. It wasn't perfect.
It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't like today. Because like you said, we had our isms and schisms, but it just wasn't to the degree that things are today, which means that ship is sinking, man.
I don't remember racial tension in the 90s. I personally don't remember. You're a little older than me, but did you see too much racial tension in the 90s?
It's always been here, but in the 90s, it's not promoted. It's not like now, because like I was in my early 20s. I was like 21, 22 when you had Ice Cube leaving NWA, and he went to New York, hooked up with Bomb Squad and Public Enemy, so he became very conscious. You had Ice-T going through his thing with Cop Killer, and you had Tupac. So there was a cultural consciousness that was heavy on the scene in the early 80s, which was the end of conscious hip hop. And so race was a problem, but it was benign compared to what we have today. You see,
Correct.
so yeah, so like
race pimps making money off this identity politics.
So it's always been here, but people like navigate it, around it, like where it is today. Like there are whole movements, man, like whole movements, and it's impacted, all spheres of social life.
Djehuty, before we move on, why did you actually leave the nation?
I realized it wasn't for me. Again, I was into the beauty of Islam, and the real experiences I got did not match that. We went to Fresno in 1994 to hear Minister Louis Farrakhan speak, Fresno, California. And it was that experience, that event, that really caused me to make up my mind to leave, because when we got there, I was in the hotel room reading the Quran, and all the brothers picked up pillows and they were having pillow fights and they were fighting, and it was just all this aggression. And a brother said, let's go look for some white people to beat up. And man, that really messed me up, like, wow, like that's not us, like we believe in retribution. If you harm us, then, hey, revenge. We have no problem protecting ourselves. So Islam says, hey, don't be the aggressor, but fight with those who fight with you, So there was no retribution at that time. I'm like, why would we go out and beat up innocent white people, and especially the white people who don't even make a dent in the world? My mindset is like, look, if you're going to do something crazy like that, go out with a bang, like take out a senator, a judge, somebody who, no, seriously, like somebody who can, I'm not advocating. I'm just saying that.
No, I get it.
If that's the mindset,
I get it.
Like gangbanging, like, cause I'm crazy, I'll kill, what have you. It's like, dude.
Like during Black Lives Matter, I was telling you, why are you going burning down people, Target? Or the stuff in your own neighborhood. If you're really about that life, go to the government buildings.
Go to the courthouse.
Go to the courthouse. Hire them.
And go out with the bang. Like if you're going to do something like that, man, make a dent. Like killing your little broke, ignorant brother or sister, that's not making a dent. You got to take out 5-0, a courthourthouse or what have, make a dent. And they don't have that mentality.
And again, we're not saying this is something you should do. I want to make this clear.
Please.
We're basically saying if you're going to have that mindset, do something worthy of it. That's it.
Because I don't believe in harm and violence and stuff like that. I believe in cultivating yourself. If you cultivate yourself, you don't have to resort to any of these things. When I am frustrated, Gary, it's because I say to myself, like, if Black Americans were like Djehuty Matra, we wouldn't have to talk about reparations and police brutality and all of that stuff there, because here, I can solve all of these problems. All problems are opportunities. And so when I am frustrated, it's because it's like, damn, if they would just do what I do, what I know, if they would just do it, it would be over. You don't need reparation. I'm not saying that, what happened to black people was horrible and, that the government has to, make right of certain things. I'm not saying any of that, but I'm just saying you don't have to wait around wasting your whole life on something that's really never going to happen, just keeping it real. You wouldn't have to waste time. You could do your own thing. You could fix up Compton. You could fix up South Central Los Angeles. You just got to stop buying the cars and the Birkin bags and the Dooney Burks and the gold earrings and the watches and stuff like that. You have to put that stuff on the back burner. Build your nation up first and foremost. When I was on Twitter before I took my break, I tweeted. And I caught hell for this too. This is the first time that someone said I was tap dancing or a coon or what have you, because I said, that we have to look out for the institutions that we need as a people with so-called reparations. We're being theoretical, right? Mm-hmm. So we have to take that money and we have to build the institutions that we need as a people. We cannot take that bag and go shopping at the Nike store and Guess and Gucci.
That 10-inch chain.
We can't. Now, not primarily. I'm not saying not to take care of yourself and buy some nice stuff, what have you, but your institutions got to come first and foremost. See, don't hate the Jews, study the Jews, and be like them. Those are very smart people. They have JDL. They have the Jewish World Council. They have what they need as a people, and they finance it. I mean, they're so tight, they can get other people to finance it, like the government, what have you. But first and foremost, they finance it themselves, which makes other people and the government want to finance them. It would be the same thing with African Americans. If we did for ourselves, they would knock on our door offering it to us, because that's what you do when people are civilized. and progressive, positive, what have you. When you're doing your own thing, other people don't mind helping you. When remember the Arabs, the Muslims were banned at the airports. Mm-hmm. Man, you saw a lot of white people, Christians, just people of all backgrounds, lawyers. They were lawyers, right? Mm-hmm. And man, they were at the airport sitting down on their laptops, and they were drafting these legal pleadings to help these people be able to come into the country and to leave. That would not be the case if it was Black Americans. That wouldn't be the case. Because it's like what you hear right now. When you see all the videos, the violence and the crime and the women twerking, dude, civilized people are not going to waste their resources on that. And I'm not saying all Black Americans are like that.
No, of course not.
But enough
High
of
percentage.
But enough of them are.
Okay. Djehuty, we got about 30 minutes left, and I want to get into a few more subjects.
Yes, sir.
Your forte besides the law, and by the way, this man knows law like I knew numerology. I would not say that to anyone else. Your forte besides that is holistic medicine.
Yes.
You are known pretty much as the top holistic guy in America. And for people who doubt that, all you got to do is look the size of his wallet. That's simple. I'm the only numerologist in the world who makes money. Obviously, people under me do. And he is the guy out here who's making millions upon millions with holistic medicine. In the Cliff Notes version, how have you been able to pull this off and haven't had the FDA step on your toes?
Well, the FDA came for me, but being
bet they did.
But being legally astute, I was able to navigate. The FDA taught me a very valuable lesson, man, that I've been able to run with. Your mind has to work a certain way, man, in order to really, benefit in life. So I believe in respect. I believe in property rights, what have you. And so when the FDA says that, you're making claims for diabetes and herpes and cancer, what have you, and it's against the law, a person like me steps back and look at it and like, wait a minute, these are words in the English language, medical words, but still in the English language. What do you mean it's against the law for me to use them? I don't have the right to use them. And so that's when I learned, like, wow, like we're dealing with copyright infringement. Like these words, these disease words, these are disease words. They belong to the government. And it clicked. It's like, that's their property. They make a lot of money off of this. They control people with this. And so I came up with organs. I came up with organ words, liver, lungs, kidneys. It just clicked. The FDA doesn't own your liver. It doesn't own your kidneys. It doesn't own your colon. It doesn't own your lymphatic fluid. It doesn't own your blood. I'm like, that's where we go. We focus on the positive and not the negative.
I hope you people out there are taking notes. This man's just telling you how to get him around the man right now.
Man, it's like, it's a game, right? So, but if you look at it, like, I don't want to use the word cancer and herpes and diabetes because they instill fear in the people, and you can't heal when fear is on the scene. But if you talk about nourishing the organs, toning the organs, strengthening the organs and whatnot, that's positive. It's hopeful. It gives people hope, inspiration. It motivates people, you see. And that's where the success really came from. You stop talking about diabetes. What is diabetes? It's an adverse pancreas condition. So the government wants to protect diabetes because, hell, they sell 30 different drugs for diabetes. You see, and when you deal with the plants, one plant deals with the pancreas. You see, you got one plant that deals with the pancreas. One plant. You don't make a lot of money from that. And you get the healing that you don't get with the drugs. You can't be healed with drugs because no part of your body is made up of drugs. So when women have menstrual cramps, that's not a Midol deficiency. When you have a headache, that's not an aspirin deficiency. There's no part of your body made up of aspirin. No part of your body is made up of Viagra. No part of your body is made up of Midol. You see, we are organic creatures, so our medicine has to be organic. For the people who are religious, what does the Bible say? Psalm 104:14. God created the grass for the cattle and the herbs for the service of man. What does Ezekiel 47:12 say? See, the fruit will be the food and the leaf will be the medicine. What does Revelation 22:2 says? That the leaf shall be for the healing of the nations. This is scripture telling you that the plants are your medicine. The word drug goes back to the old French word drogue, D-R-O-G-U-E, drogue. That's where our word drug comes from. When you look up drogue, it means dried plant. That's the herb. The original drug is the herb. That's why I call myself the Frank Matthews of herbalism.
Is it true in your opinion that any disease that a human can get can be cured by some plant, some type of water, some type of natural healing remedy? Is that your opinion?
Absolutely. If it's degenerative in nature, it's 100% reversible, 100%. My father went out in 6 months from cancer. His doctor said, you got 6 months to live, and that man was gone. A big reason for that was my father embraced it here. See, my health changed in the mid-90s because one day I rose from sleep and I said, you know what? I'm no longer going to believe in these disease words. I no longer catch colds because I don't believe in colds, because I never caught a warm, I never caught a hot, but I caught a cold. So I had to switch that up. And so I let that go. So that went away. And I was a very sickly child coming up, and headaches, constipation, like you name it, I had it. Mm-hmm. And I reversed all of that. First and foremost with the mind. I had to stop believing in these things, and then I had to find out what they were. Most people are afraid of genital herpes. They're afraid of it. You have it for life. You can't heal, and your love life is over. Your sex life is over. And that's BS. What is genital herpes? Latin word herpean, to creep. We got critters on the scene. We don't think in terms of parasites when it comes to genital herpes. We don't think in terms of toxic blood when it comes to genital herpes, which is the perfect environment, for these critters,
Mm-hmm.
These parasites.
Yes.
So when you learn that, and you learn that you can purify the blood, you can cleanse and purify the blood, you can kill and expel parasites and worms, how are you going to tell me that you can't heal?
Okay. Andrew Tate and Sneeko says, when people say that they're depressed, that's not real. What is your opinion?
What do you mean?
Is depression real? They say depression isn't real. That's just made up to sell drugs and stuff like that for big pharma. Is that your opinion, that depression isn't real, just some bullshit big pharma made up?
No, depression is most definitely real. It's I deal with health from a spiritual perspective as well, too. So depression is when the spirit is deflated. And so if I recall the snippet where Andrew was talking about, that was about people not having things to do, no purpose in life, yes, and was lazy, what happened. And I can understand that. And from that perspective, again, I understand, because the spirit is deflated. So if you don't have any purpose or drive in life, the spirit is deflated. So if there's sorrow, if there's melancholy, and you don't do anything about that, then yeah, you're going to be in that so-called depressed state. So depression is most definitely real.
Okay. A couple more topics I want to talk about before we go. You are an unusual cat, or should I say unusual dog, because you are born in the dog year.
Dog. I'm cool with cat.
People been asking me about the astrology, what's your numerology, for about 2 hours now.
Wow.
So we're going to get into this.
Okay.
You are an unusual man, because I've heard you, and so has everyone else, quote the Quran, quote the Bible. But me and you, when we talk about numerology and astrology too.
Right.
So I'm going to tell you some, people like this is 2023. This is the year that people are interested in knowledge. How many more people have you seen gravitate toward you and gravitate toward what you're saying specifically this year compared to the past?
This is the busiest year of my life.
Say it again, brother.
This is the busiest year of my life. I've never experienced, and this is only July. The year's not even over with yet, And this is the busiest I've ever been. I say to myself, Djehuty, what are you going to do? I'm not even on the scene like how I used to be. And
you will be now, brother.
And my phone blows up, and the emails, what have you. And it's just like, man, what can I do to really just get it out there? Because I want to see people excel. I don't like when the same people continually come to me, because, that's a negative mark against me. When you keep coming to me, you're not getting it. I want you to get it and go out. You see,
Teach them how to fish. Don't give them a fish.
Absolutely. You see, so when a lot of people that I've known for 10, 15, 20 years are still on the scene and, hey, I got this problem, that problem, it's like they're not getting it. So I say to myself, Djehuty, what is it that you can do so that these people can get it? And I have to write more than I've ever written before in the past because I have a way. I told you the other day, I live by codes, right? I have my own monetary code, right? I've never gone to business school or what have you, but, you know, I learned finances.
You're a good capitalist.
I came up like millions. I never thought I would live to see $1 million. And I have to say that when you reach $1 million, it really, no disrespect to anybody who doesn't have it. I don't want to kill anybody's inspiration or motivation, but man, once you get it, it's nothing. Like you,
he's being nice. Let me make this abundantly clear. If you think $1 million is a lot of money, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You can't even buy a house in California or Miami for a freaking $1 million. Okay, let's keep it real, man. $1 million might have been something when they say that song "I Want to Be a Millionaire" came out in the 1990s. Brother, we got biflation. We got Obama-flation. We got Trump-flation. It's not the same anymore, brother. $1 million ain't shit.
But this is, see, and I agree with that. However, there are people.
What do you make that in 3 months?
But look, there's a lot of people out there who
he's quiet,
bro. There's a lot of people out there who they're not in that category. They don't have that.
That's why they're listening to you.
Yeah, but see, that's why I said I don't want to kill anybody's inspiration or motivation because they haven't. You know, they're probably at 40,000, 50,000, what have you. So $1 million. I mean, that's going to be orgasmic to them. But once they reach that, because after orgasm you come down, you want another orgasm, and you want a more powerful one. So 1 million becomes 2.5 million. 2.5 becomes 5. 5 becomes 10. 10 becomes 20. 20 becomes 40. You're not going to be satisfied. You're not going to be satisfied like $1 million or life is complete. I don't have to do anything. No, it loses its value. Now, you have to be there to understand what I'm saying. You know, it loses its value. 1 million ain't going to cut it. Like when you get it, orgasmic, right? Mm-hmm. But it's not going to, if you stay there, it's not going to cut it. You will most definitely require more. And this is why you see people willing and dealing.
Especially if you want a dime piece.
Absolutely. You know, it's never done, people. If you attain $1 million and you say that life is complete now, you're missing the mark.
You better be moving to Panama. You better be moving to Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me, Mexico. You better be moving somewhere because $1 million ain't going to last you. Or you could move to West Virginia. You know, 50,000, you a millionaire in West Virginia.
But what if you want to be in Florida? You know, what if you want to be?
You better be making $1 million a year, bro.
Ain't gonna cut it. And I hate to, like I said, I don't want to kill anybody's drive initiation. Go for it. If you haven't attained it, go for it. Always go for it. But just understand, it's not the end all be all.
Djehuty, we're running short on time, so we're going to get into this very quickly. A lot of people listening to me all the time tell me I'm an egotistical bastard. I'm sure people are listening to you right now saying, whoa, you got a fucking ego out the ass. Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, I have never seen a poor man change the world while he was alive. A couple of them did it when they passed, but no poor man ever changed the world while he was alive. What do you say to people who make it seem that being poor is righteous?
You know, when members of the Black Panther Party were arrested or were incarcerated before trial, they wanted to be out of prison, but they couldn't be. I should say jail. They wanted to be out of jail, but they couldn't be. You know why? They didn't have the money to post bail. You gotta have snaps. The Black Panther Party hooked up with people who had snaps. The Jane Fondas and Leonard Bernsteins, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People who had snaps, got their snaps, and was able to get a few of the Panthers out. You gotta have money, especially in the Matrix. I'm not saying be a whore for sell your soul. I didn't do any of those things. I've never gone to college. You know, I've never gangbanged. I never sold drugs.
You never sold out either, did you?
I never sold out. Never done any of those things. And the money came from me. Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, and then all things of the world, which I call the Matrix, shall be added unto you. And if you know law, the word shall in law is mandatory. It's mandatory. When you seek ye first the kingdom of God and God's righteousness, all things of the world will be added unto you. Now, you know what's sad, Gary?
What's that?
Most people don't know what the kingdom of God is. and they don't even know that it is their duty to define it for themselves. So for me, the kingdom of God is in here. God wants me to do what I desire to do.
What do you tell people to say when they say be more humble?
Be more humble? I tell them to tell that to people who are not moving, willing and dealing, moving and shaking, insignificant people, little people. I tell them to give that to them because Muhammad Ali wasn't humble. Bruce Lee wasn't humble. Great people are not humble. And I understand where people are coming from, but it's detrimental. It is detrimental. We are born with ego. There's skillful ego and there's unskillful ego.
What I call deserved ego and undeserved ego.
There's two.
And when people actually have an ego and haven't accomplished shit in life, that to me is undeserved ego.
That's insalubrious. That's detrimental ego. As I told you the other day, ego can serve you. It served Bruce Lee well. It served Muhammad Ali well. It can serve you well. So I believe in ego. I don't believe in killing the ego. That's stupid.
That's what all the spiritual people tell you. All the spiritual group, 99% of them will sit back and tell you have to kill the ego to basically become one with the matrix itself.
That's their spirituality. I have my own spiritual
I call them
code.
spiritual communists.
I have my spiritual code that I live by, and if people want to believe that and do that, that's good for them. But I said we spoke about this yesterday. Listen, man. Material and spiritual go together.
You got to balance them.
They go together. You can be materially bankrupt and you can also be spiritually bankrupt. You can be materially wealthy and you can be spiritually wealthy.
Correct.
You don't have to choose one over the other. We are citizens of two worlds at the same time, spiritual and material. See, this is where most people go wrong at. They don't understand that they're citizens of two worlds at the same time. Now, they know they're citizens of the matrix, and they got to go by the California Penal Code and the New York this and the Florida that, what have. They know that, even though they don't know it, consciously. But they know there are laws. But what about the spiritual laws? You see, so as we acknowledge man-made law, how come we don't acknowledge spiritual law? See, I acknowledge both. And that's why I win 9/10 of the cases when I go to court. I win because I go in with spiritual law. See, if you go in with spiritual law, man-made law is not going to go against spiritual law, especially when it's predicated upon the spirit of law. We're talking constitutional law. There's something called the spirit of law, the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. So when you understand the spirit of the law, man, it matches spiritual law. The spirit of the law matches spiritual law. Mm-hmm. I go into court with that. That's why I come out victorious. I come out protected.
Can we get, how much more time can we get? 5 minutes? All right. Djehuty, let's start wrapping this up.
Okay.
Brother, again, one more time, how do people reach you? How do people find you?
I would have to say that because there's many, I'm helping a lot of people get started out there. So divinemedicinals.com, use that contact us. Go to mandingo.com and you can use the contact us. Go to divinemedicinals.com first and foremost. Those are my girls there.
Djehuty, we talked a lot about race. We talked a lot about politics. We talked a lot about religion. In the last few minutes, I want to talk about numerology and astrology.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Is that something that you believe very strongly in?
Absolutely. They changed my life. I mean, they changed my life financially, health-wise, in relationships, and you name it. I live by them.
You were born... Do you mind if I give you your birthday?
No, not at all.
Okay. You were born 4/24/1970. You're a 9 life path dog. I want people to understand something. When I talk to Djehuty, he gives me hope for 9 life paths. I mean, straight up, he gives me hope for 9 life paths because this brother got his shit together.
Thank you.
And I want people to understand something, man. When I look at people and I look at their numerology, you have, this is 2023. Mm-hmm. So 2023, you're going to notice that people born on the 23rd, like Matei, a guy who came out of nowhere, guy's born in 2007, and he's over here making millions and millions of videos. A guy like Zerka, born on the 23rd, who's completely dominating doing Andrew Tate.
Wow.
You, my friend, are born on the 24th. So I would not be surprised if you have a huge media presence in 2024. Even though it's a dragon year, I think you can do pretty well on media. And let me tell you, brother, When I talk to people, I usually dominate the conversation. This is different, brother. I'm just sitting back here enjoying the conversation because you can spit for hours, bro.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 2 hours will never do justice for me. I can go 8 hours, 9, 10, what have you. It's just
when are you going to be
nonstop.
down in Miami?
I believe late July, early August.
We're gonna do
I'll get you the
we're gonna do a 4 or 5 hour one in my studio in Miami because brother, 2 hours with you is like having 5 minutes with the dime piece, brother. It's not gonna work out, man. The people want more, I want more. Djehuty, brother. Thank you for coming out here. I have tremendous respect. And by the way, this is a GG33 guy. He's been with me for a while. Me and Djehuty been talking since what? 215? 216?
Yeah, 215.
I've been talking to this man for quite a while. And I'm going to tell you something, guys. There's few people on this planet I have respect for. And look in my eyes when I say this. There's few people on this planet I have respect for from an intellectual standpoint like I have this man right here. Follow him on Twitter. Give it to him one more time, Djehuty.
Yeah, you can find me, Djehuty Speaks. That's on Twitter. Go to Twitter, type in Djehuty Speaks, you'll find me. And then also Divine Medicinals and Mandingo.com. And you know how I always do too, Gary, with the 33. So the people, your people can go to both of those sites and get 33% off. I'm going to call Lisa and let her know. You guys get 33% off the orders at divinemedicinals.com and Mandingo.com. 33 for GG33.
More benefits for being a GG33 member. Anyways, this has been one of the most interesting, intellectual podcast I think that's been released this year.
Wow.
Anyways, brother, again, thank you.
Likewise.
Again. This has been a GG33 production live from Las Vegas.